Good morning. Thank you for joining me. Today is Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025. I almost wrote 2026 earlier. Alexa, pause. Today I'm going to be talking about social justice in the workplace. This is going to be short. I have quite a few tasks to take care of today. Two things in Wyoming news is today is Tuesday, is Giving Tuesday. So please think about any organizations, nonprofits, people who are doing good for society and humanity. Please think about donating today. If you watch this today, Tuesday, December 2nd, but even whenever you watch it, you have a couple bucks somewhere, please think about donating that. And then the other thing is, there was a shooting, a police shooting. A police shot someone up in Fremont County, and that's really serious. The highway patrol, because it doesn't happen very often in Wyoming, but there's twice now where police were involved with someone who ended up dead. A fatal officer-involved shooting that occurred on Sunday, November 30th, 2025 in Fremont County. A suspect wanted on domestic violence charges was killed in Fremont County. That just happened. That's, I think, something we need to be aware of. I need to do one more thing here. Today is Social Justice Tuesday. This is part of the work that I'm doing. To just keep us informed at this moment on workplace situations that are really unfair and detrimental to the workforce. And when organizations, policies, procedures, unspoken rules have the direct cause of employee dissatisfaction, employee hurt, employee harm, that's going to hurt the overall organization. The organization's innovation, ability to create, ability to have open doors, ability to be transparent. But what is social justice, right? So social justice refers to the fair treatment and equitable distribution of resources, opportunities, and privileges within a society, aiming to address inequalities and promote human rights for all individuals. So social justice is fundamentally about ensuring that all individuals and social groups receive fair treatment and equitable status within a society. It encompasses various aspects, including economic, political, and social rights, and seeks to rectify historical injustices faced by marginalized and oppressed populations. So some of the key principles of social justice include equity, ensuring that everyone has access to the same opportunities and resources regardless of their background or identity. Participation, encouraging all individuals to engage in decision-making processes that affect their lives and communities. And the rights, recognizing and protecting the human rights of all individuals, including the right to education, healthcare, and decent standard of living. And diversity, valuing and respecting differences among individuals, including race, gender, sexual orientation, ability, economic status. So moving forward then, social justice in the workplace means creating systems where every worker is treated with dignity, equity, and respect, regardless of race, gender, background, or role. It's about repairing harm, dismantling bias, and ensuring fair access to opportunity. What it really means: fairness in hiring and pay, equal pay for equal work, transparent promotion pathways, and recruitment practices that don't exclude marginalized groups. One of the things I want to say about fairness in pay is, so one of the organizations that I've worked with, and more than one, there's usually for your job description, for your your role in the organization and similar roles in the organization, there's usually a pay range, right? You make anywhere from this to this if you are in this group of people who work on this job, right, in this role. So what happens then if you are interviewing like right now or interviewing soon for a job and the organization has that pay scale, know that if you go in at the very top, you're not going to get a raise within the next 3 years because they're going to anticipate that you're going to stay in that role for a minimum of 3 years before wanting to move up. So if you go for the high end, you're not going to have a pay increase for the next 3 years unless you get a promotion. And then again, the same thing. So it's really best to just kind of go in the mid range of whatever that range that is. That ensures equitable pay for everyone across the organization in those roles, right? If you're a director or a senior professor over this department, then everyone within that gap, within that range, within that role, then has that range of pay, right? Okay, that promotes fairness. When you have when you work for an organization that does not have that, and by chance, people get brought onto the organization in your same role that you've been in for the last however many years, but they are brought in because there isn't a defined pay range within that organization. They are brought in at a much higher rate than what you're currently making. That can cause dissatisfaction in workers, right? To learn that someone else is being brought into the organization doing practically the exact same role, but their pay is significantly greater. That's a unfairness. Social justice can come in and say, for all of us who work in this pay range, we would like clear and transparent what this pay range is. I don't need to know what everybody else is making, but I would like to know that everyone else who is doing the same job that I'm doing, who's performing the same duties and tasks that I'm doing, we're all getting paid around the same wage, and that anyone being brought in new isn't being paid more than us, right? They're being brought in at that same wage rate as well. That can cause, hey, worker uh, uh, anger, worker frustration, a lack of, a real quick break of trust within the organization. As soon as a worker learns that someone is being brought on that makes more money than them. Okay, so equal pay for equal work, and then transparent pathways for promotion. And if there isn't any, like, there's just not anywhere for you to go, these roles are there. What is your next step? What is your next growth step within that organization? And honestly and effortlessly, say to yourself, there isn't one, right? There isn't one. So am I okay with this being like where I'm going to be for the next 3 years, or do I need to be looking for an organization that does offer um, pathways for promotion? Again, another experience that can be disheartening to workers is to think that there is a pathway for promotion, to believe that there is a transparent pathway for promotion, and then to have someone from outside the organization come in and fill a role, a role, a promotable role, right? You able to promote from within rather than from promoting from within, hiring someone from outside the company to come in and fill that role. That does not lead to transparency, and that automatically breaks workers' trust. And recruitment practices that don't exclude marginalized groups, right? So that's really difficult in an age of ageism and isms all together. How do you not exclude somebody just because they fit into a marginalized group? One of the ways is to begin by looking at your internal bias, looking at what you internally believe about human rights and humanity and human beings and individuals, and how you receive that interaction. And then you can say to yourself, wow, if you are mature in your thinking and your emotions, then you can say, wow, I can see where my internal bias was against this person, and therefore I didn't interview them. And maybe the next time that opportunity comes where I should have hired or at least looked at a marginalized person for this role, maybe in the future I will do that given another opportunity. Safe and inclusive environments. Workplaces free from harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. There's a bug there, where psychological safety is prioritized. Again, that safety and the word violence, it is a trigger, and I understand that. But there is emotional violence. There is verbal violence. So having a supervisor be aggressive and assertive and why, that is violent. That's in a close proximity, even though that person, that supervisor doesn't maybe make a step, maybe they do, but just their body language is aggressive and assertive. That's violent, right? I just yelled at her. That's all I did. No, you shouldn't have even yelled at her. Like, that should not have even happened, right? Or he was just really, I don't know, condescending to me. Well, just take it and, right. Okay. So those kinds of things can disrupt the culture of an organization and cause it to, just actually probably fall apart. So workplaces free from harassment, discrimination, retaliation. Again, that's really hard, right? So going to HR to say, da 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 da, and then that interaction with HR leading to a conversation with supervisors that was totally unintended. Like, that was not the intention of going to HR at all, right? The anger that comes from the supervisors, right? So if you can't go to HR without feeling safe, then you don't got a safe culture. You don't have a safe environment. You're not providing social justice. So retaliation for going to HR, retaliation for going to your supervisor, right? I'm going to my supervisor. I'm saying, this is what happened. This is how it made me feel. And then rather than appropriate actions being taken, then what in fact happens is detrimental to myself and the organization, the worker and the organization. So psychological safety is prioritized. Are you mentally, emotionally, physically, do you feel safe in this organization? That would be the role of social justice, to ensure that every worker feels psychologically safe, that your well-being matters to us within the organization. Voice and agency, workers having a say in decisions that affect them, from scheduling to policy changes. This includes union rights and collective bargaining. It's really important then, if you want to be an organization, if you want to be part of a company culture that promotes social justice, it's really important to provide a safe space for everyone to be heard. I have some rules on that. I'm not a big fan of rules, but I am going to get them out, because there's some rules around how we can have conversations where everyone does feel heard. And one of the biggest things is not to be quick to respond, right? You're listening to someone, you don't want to react, but you do want to respond. If you're thinking about how you're going to respond, then you're not listening to what they're saying. One of the nicest things, to repeat back, but not word for word. So I've had that situation too, where I'm in a working relationship, we're trying to work on understanding, and the other person just parrots back to me what I've said word for word. That tells me that you heard me, but that understanding didn't connect in the brain cells, right? So really listening then says, before I'm going to respond, I'm going to reply in some way to something that I've heard you say that touched me deeply. Okay. So maybe the conversation is, this scheduling doesn't work for me on Tuesdays. I've mentioned it before, because I've mentioned this before, that the scheduling doesn't work for me on Tuesdays because I have to pick up my child at 2 p.m. Can we work on the schedule? And I've talked to you about it before. That's me, the worker, going to my supervisor. Now, my supervisor could be just listening to respond and say, well, you need to write me a letter, or just make it sure, just write it to me again. Okay, I don't think you understood or heard that like this is affecting me and my trust of the company, of the organization. If the supervisor comes back and says, help me make sure I understood what you're saying. On the schedule, you can't work Tuesdays past this time because you need to go pick up your child. Is that accurate? The person says back, yes, that's accurate. They felt heard. You didn't get quick to respond. You were listening to understand and then to respond back to them in a respectful way. Okay, I think I hear you. Is this accurate? It's pretty easy. All right. Union rights and collective bargaining, the opportunity for that group. So as I was talking earlier, thank you for joining. As I was talking earlier about that pay range, just one of the things to think about too is if you don't have that pay range, right, that pay isn't transparent of what people make. There's no transparency policy, either written or unwritten, about what people make. Then that's the time for collective bargaining, to get together as a group in a responsible way, in a reflective way, to say, we would appreciate it if our organization would change so that wages of employees is transparent. Maybe not everybody's wages out there, because that can cause discomfort as well, but that everybody's getting paid who's doing a specific role within that pay range. That is voice and agency. That's being able to come together as a group to say, we'd like to see some change within the organization. You don't necessarily need a union to do that, but you do need someone, there's several people who feel strongly enough about the issue to bring it up to management. And you do need management that's able to hear and understand and not just get defensive and think they're being attacked, right? Like, this is just an opportunity for us to get better. Let's just get better, right? Let's just make this better. All right. Social justice also means in the workplace. That's what I'm talking about. Social justice in the workplace, accountability for harm, addressing racial discrimination, gender bias, I'd say ageism, microaggressions directly. I've done a whole presentation on what microaggressions are. I've led a small group on that, rather than ignoring or minimizing them. All right. So what are the biases that are going on? Let's talk about them. Let's talk about what the biases are without there being retaliation, without there being harm. When we, meet with this customer, and can we talk about what our initial responses are? Or when we meet with this professor, can we talk about what our initial responses are? Or, whatever it is, let's talk about it as a group. Let's talk about what our internal biases are. So, maybe for the first time, we've encountered a transgender person as a group, as an office. We are now encountering a transgender person. The opportunity to be able to say out loud and discuss in a group, well, what are your biases right now? What are some of the things going on in your head and your heart about this transgender person? Not specifically this person, but about your internal reaction to them. We can talk about that and then have it accountable, right? So, okay, now we know how we're feeling. We've addressed it. And now what are we going to do to make it right? How are we going to, what's our not reaction, but what's the next step that we're going to do? I'm thinking about the star thing right now. So moving on, common social justice issues in workplaces, racial discrimination, unequal treatment based on race or ethnicity. That's number one. I would say ageism is coming in there, but that's just me at this moment. Could be not true. Gender inequality, pay gaps, lack of advancement opportunities, or bias in leadership roles. Okay. If you're not promoting certain people within your organization, why? Gender inequity. Pay gaps are actually reducing. They're starting to see pay gaps actually are coming down for the difference between men and women. The gap still remains for like teachers, nurses, that kind of thing, social workers. But in other fields, especially because of that, having that wage bar for everyone, that's really helped, especially in academia, making sure that all professors, no matter, who they are, what their gender is, whatever is, that all professors are within this wage range, right? That's one way that we've helped reduce gender and inequity, especially in pay gaps. Lack of opportunities or bias in leadership roles. So again, are certain genders not getting promoted within your organization because there's a bias about who can be in leadership or who to be put in leadership. Accessibility barriers, limited accommodations for people with disabilities. So this just really gets to me. I was aware of this a while ago in a whole different situation, but like the use of Grammarly, it's a tool, right? It's a tool that's going to help everyone do better in their job. But to limit the use of Grammarly is also to limit people with disabilities. So Grammarly is a great tool if you have ADHD, right, or dyslexia, right? It's absolutely an amazing tool to use. That should not be not available to people. Grammarly as a tool should not be, it should be available to people to use, whether they have a disability or not. Hi, thank you. What else am I talking about here? Economic exploitation, wage theft, unsafe conditions, or precarious contracts. Wage theft can happen both ways, right? So wage theft can happen when a worker clocks in and then doesn't do the work. So this happens, unfortunately, with remote workers, but it can happen with workers in an office building, in a brick and mortar. They can walk into that office every day, clock in and go, walk around the building 10 times and spend 25 minutes in the break room and another 30 in the bathroom. Like that's wage theft, when a worker clocks in but doesn't actually go to work and do the work. Wage theft can also happen from the company side of things. So wage theft can happen when the company says you work 40 hours a week, and now we're asking you to work 45 hours a week, and those extra 5 hours are not going to be reimbursed. They're just expected. My time is my time. It's worth a lot to me. And so if you're going to take another 5 hours of my time, I'm going to request that I get paid. Again, this is where advocacy and voice come in, because if this is happening to more than one person, then you can come together as a group and say, we'd like more transparency around this. Wage theft is real, but don't steal from us either. Unsafe working conditions and precarious contracts. And again, like, contracts can be difficult. So if you get into a situation, and again, social justice matters, when you're looking at that contract, if it's an employment contract, is it equitable to you? Is it only equitable to the organization? And one of the key places to look at that is if there's any kind of arbitration that needs to be done. So if there's arbitration that needs to be done, so there's something that happened within the workplace, somebody got written up, they're ready to fire, but instead of being able to go out and seek outside counsel or outside mediation, because of their workers' contract, are required to stay within the organization and only use the organization's arbitration system. It's unfair to the worker. It's not equitable to the worker. That's an example of a contract that is precarious and something to look at. All right, what can you do? What can we do to increase social justice in the workplace? Model equity from the top. Leadership must actively demonstrate commitment to fairness and inclusion. Embed DEI into strategy. I'm going to say it, right? I'm not going to stop saying it. Diversity, equity, and inclusion aren't side projects. They're core to organizational success. Thank you for stopping by. Creative restorative practices. Instead of punitive responses, use restorative justice frameworks to repair harm and rebuild trust. Listen and act. Regularly engage employees in dialogue, surveys, and feedback loops. Then implement changes based on what's heard. Listen and act. Oh, wait, let me go. We'll do listen and act. Regularly engage employees in dialogue, surveys, and feedback loops. Then implement changes based on what's heard. And instead of punitive responses, use restorative justice framework to repair harm and rebuild trust. Why it matters. Morale and productivity. Workers thrive when they feel respected and safe. Retention and recruitment. Inclusive workplaces attract and keep talent. Systematic repair. Social justice in the workplace helps dismantle broader inequities in society, from economic gaps to hierarchies. All right, that's my segment for today. Social justice is an ongoing pursuit that seeks to create a more equitable society by addressing the root causes of inequity and discrimination. It calls for collective action to ensure that all individuals can participate fully in society and enjoy their rights and freedoms. Understanding and advocating for social justice is essential for fostering a just and inclusive world for everyone. I'm Elle Cameron. Alexa, will you play me some music, please? Thanks for joining me. Thanks for listening. It's a good day. It's a good day. I have a lot to be thankful for. I hope you do too. I have made a decision about my life. It may be a strange surprise to some. What is this? I always thought I wanted what so many want. Life is always changing, and I drift easily through those changes, good and bad. As I drift through hard times, I can take comfort in knowing that I will leave them behind. As I drift away from good times, I can take comfort in knowing that more will come. Impermanence is an equal opportunity non-entity. Have a good day. I know I am. And I know that's how I am meant to live.